Thank you, Lindsay. I'm actually going to skip straight to Jan because Tina already answered the why coffee question that we have here. I will say go to Sanford and support the coffee shop, though.
It's delicious.
Yes, please
And they have
do.
a tea, the Sanford, what's it called? The
Sanford Fog.
Oh,
Yes.
so good.
It is really good coffee.
So good.
So Jan and I have had developed a friendship and advocacy, being in part of UNICEF as well, and supporting her with paving the way. Can you share with the audience the many conversations we've had on the importance of prevention, what's being done in this area, and how can the community help?
Awesome. So when I started this journey, it started in Ethiopia, and I had no idea what human trafficking was 4 years ago, had no clue. And then while on the streets of Ethiopia, witnessed it firsthand, and it was just not okay with me. You know, the fact that one human was selling another human, it was appalling, quite frankly. And I came home because I wanted to do something about it, and that's really where I learned about Florida. And so I started making phone calls. You know, so for everybody up here on this panel, and some of you in the audience know, I know people. So I started picking up the phone and calling people, like, who can I talk to? I got to talk to somebody about this because this makes no sense to me. And I asked them all one question: what's missing? The difference of which would make a difference. And they all said the same thing. Because look, I talked to the FBI, Homeland Security, undercover police officers, along with survivors, not these three ladies because I hadn't met them yet. And they all said awareness. Nobody knows what's happening. And I'm like, well, okay, I have a background in media, I can do that. So as I started learning more and more about this, what I discovered also was missing was on the front side of this is the prevention work. Because as much as you've heard all three of these incredible women say, if someone had only known, if someone had been trained to, you know, to go, oh my gosh, that this child is suffering, I need to do something. Because if we can prevent this from happening to our children, the long game alters. Because here's what you really need to understand. Our children are the targets. Our children are the commodity. They're the ones that need to be educated so they know what's happening online, so they know what's happening at Starbucks, so they know what's happening at the mall. That some good-looking guy walks up and tells them they're beautiful. They're like, I know, see ya. Or I want to take you out to dinner. Oh, sure, you can come home and meet my parents. So we've trained over 3,600 kids in the past 18 months to this exact thing. And watching them discover for themselves and to be empowered has altered their future. I'm clear we've saved at least 3,600 lives, if not more, right? Because then they'll tell two friends and they'll tell two friends. So the prevention work for the children is imperative, but also the community around them, their families. You know, we've all seen those articles in the Orlando Sentinel and really across the country about the 14-year-old girl who met the friend on Facebook, then started playing video games, you know, Xbox Live, and she thought it was another 14-year-old girl, when in reality it was a 34-year-old man from Illinois that drove all the way down here to get her. That, the family, the moms, the dads, the aunts, the uncles, the siblings, they've got to understand what's happening too. So if they're spending a lot more time online than they ever have before, what are you doing? Who's this friend? Because right now in our society, our children believe if I friend someone on Facebook, they're my friend. Because in part of our training, we actually talk about social media, and I ask them why. First of all, what's your number one social media? Ironically, Instagram, then Snapchat, right? And I'm like, okay, because now Facebook's for all of us. All the old people are now on Facebook, right? And then I ask them why, and they say to be famous. I'm like, okay, why do you want to be famous? They can't answer that question. So there's this allure of something that they think it's going to give them something, and they don't really understand the what can happen on the other side of that. And so as parents and as people that wrap around these children, we have to understand what they're dealing with. Because the other thing that we discovered, I was lucky enough to go to Celebration High School with a friend of mine, Katie from Beatty Girls. This is her fabulous jewelry, by the way. And Every time we showed the film to 2,500 kids, right? 7 different classes in one Friday and then 7 different classes another Friday. Every class, someone would come out and they were dealing with something. Now, it wasn't trafficking, but there was depression, there was isolation, there was loneliness, there was missing their parents that were in another country and they're here. Our children are dealing with stuff and they think, I'm going to borrow your phone, this is the solution. They think if I friend enough people, if I become famous, whatever that is, it's going to fill that hole. And as people that wrap around them, we've got to give them that connection that they're so desperately wanting. Because someone out there will fill that and it won't go well for them. So educating to prevent our children from understanding what this is, educating the parents to know, look, you gotta know their social media passwords. You have to. I know it could be upsetting for them. I don't care. You're the parent, okay? Sorry. And then our community, because much like the lady shared, if you're at a 7-Eleven and you're going in to get your whatever, and you look over and there's 2 older gentlemen with some younger girls, or a woman with a younger boy, and you're like, that just doesn't feel right. That you take that action because you now know what it looks like. We've actually possibly prevented a child from living a life that none of us can have imagined. None of us here. These 3 ladies have lived it. And that's why prevention is so important. And one of the bills that we're going to work on, Ross, by the way, is the one to get, I'm just saying, is to have education be in our schools. The PSA program is going to be great. It's a great way to have that. But to have this education be a part of our curriculum in our schools so the kids get it and the teachers get it. So now all of a sudden they're aware and they're empowered. Because that's what it's going to take is these kids getting, no, this is my life, this is my body, you can't have it, it's not yours, it's mine. And I get to say how it goes.
All right, thank you. So the time right now is 6:57. If I can have everyone gather back by 7:10, so we can conclude it with the question and answers as from this town hall, and I will see you at
You guys have the little
7:10.
white card, so if you
Yes.
have questions, write your questions down on there and we'll field them and ask the panel, okay?
All right,
Thanks.
see you in a few minutes.
Yay.
Esto es amor de verdad, nadie lo puede dudar.
Step up to craft beer. Taino Light Lager has a crisp, refreshing Caribbean-style flavor. Boricua Craft Ale, full-bodied flavor for the true beer drinker. Stop drinking beer water.
Mundo gira pegado a ti.
Taino Craft Light Lager and Boricua Strong Craft Ale. Feel the rhythm and come up to craft beer.
Panel, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I do have a pretty awesome announcement, so I'm going to start with that.
Perfect.
So one of our audience basically wanted to share to help UCF select the collective community impact strategy. Voting opens at 10 a.m. on Tuesday, May 8th, closes at noon. So human trafficking was one of the 5 topics that made it as one of for potential choices, and the strategy selected will be up for funding and collaboration, which increases research, advocacy, and more. So contact UCF for the space,
Okay.
especially on the topic of human trafficking. All right, so open forum to any of the panelists. The first question we have here states that I am a teacher. How can I increase awareness? How can I get you to train my students? I think we can divert that to Jan Edwards for later. This person teaches in Winter Park at an all-girls alternative school.
Awesome. So call me, we'll talk. Yeah, so really, for the people in the audience right here, just come talk to me. We'll work it out. For those of you that are going to be watching here locally and nationally, go to our website. The easiest is stoptraffickingtoday.com. Again, stoptraffickingtoday.com. And just send us an email. We've got mission ambassadors that are actually trained to go out and have this conversation. We have mission ambassadors, about 25 of them, trained from Arizona all the way up to Maryland. And we did this for a reason, because you know what, you should see my calendar, but I'm busy this conversation isn't going to alter if it's just me or just Tomas or just Savannah or it's just not going to alter. We need every single one of us out there having this kind of conversation. So we actually train people to go out. So call me if you're here. If not, go online and we'll figure it out. We'll get somebody to you. And that's, and especially if you're an all-girls alternative school, this is imperative. I just showed the film last night at the Orange County Library, and we had 13 girls from one of the counties come in. And we show our film, Trapped in the Trade, and then we have a conversation afterwards. And the great thing about the dialogue is we let the audience lead it, right? So they ask questions, and we kind of have a couple things we want to say, but we let them lead it. And there was a little girl sitting up front, and as we're having this conversation, you could see the light bulb go off over her head. And before we speak, we always say to our audience, in particular if they're children, look, this might bubble stuff up. It's okay. It's okay to have feels. We're all here. The counselors know what we're doing. I'm here. If we've got mission ambassadors, if you need to talk to somebody, just pull us out and we'll talk to you. Well, she turned around, she goes, Miss Jan, I got to talk. And I'm like, okay. So out the door we went. Well, she had, we're having this dialogue, she said, you know what? About a year ago, this older man was taking me out to dinner, took me to Sephora, took me to JCPenney to buy clothes, took me here, took me there. I think he was grooming me. And we're like, yep, he probably was. And you could see she was really dealing with immediately, well, that was my fault. I'm like, no, sweetheart. These are master manipulators, masterful at this. It's not your fault. I want to go to Sephora. We all do, right? Somebody wants to take us shopping, we'll go. Not a problem. However, the perpetrators, both male and female, know exactly what they're doing. And they lure you in that way, and then you're down that path. And that's why, having this conversation with the kids is so important. So, I think this should actually be a national law, just saying.
Can I touch on that very quickly?
Please.
Specifically dealing with the alternative schools, there's a case that happened in Seminole County, and I don't want to say too much to protect the identity of the victim, but the victim was a straight A honorable student. The victim got in trouble for a pot charge and ended up at an alternative high school. And it was at that alternative high school that she met her trafficker for the first time, fell in love, and ended up at the end of that story being a human trafficking victim to a major gang, and was being raped countless times a day by random strangers for a very, very long period of time. And I would just point out that, especially when it comes to alternative schools, unfortunately, sometimes you have people in alternative schools because a bad situation happens and they end up there. But they also house some of our more dangerous members of society as well, because when you have somebody like a human trafficker, they're probably going to do something that might land them there. So I would recommend to the teacher of an alternative school to be extra vigilant and to be extra aware and attentive to who your female students are talking to. I know it's an all-female school, which will add an advantage, but traffickers are females too. They know that men might raise a red flag, so they send in their top girl. And that's a very, very common tactic because it's very devious and it works. So make sure you get the training, make sure your staff is fully trained, and make sure you're aware and engaged in the lives of every single person. The girl who's not coming to school, the girl who's not necessarily awake in class, it's time to start asking some questions. Like Savannah said, when she's asking to stay for detention instead of going home, a question could save a life.
And one more thing, around that same vein. Not every school has an after-school program. And there are children right now that when they get out of school, they don't want to go home. They have nowhere to go. So that's really another area that we as a community can start to address, is really find out the schools that don't have after-school programs. What churches can you get involved? What, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, what other community civic environment can you create for these kids to have some place to go? A friend of mine is actually, not going to say where in the city, but she has a restaurant inside a facility, a club, and she was noticing all these kids from a middle school and a grade school were hanging out like in the outside. They didn't belong to the club, but they didn't clearly want to go home. And she said she was walking out, and she's in my head, she's like, I'm not going to talk to him, I'm not going to tell him. If you knew this woman, you'd be like, yeah, that's going to last a nanosecond. She turned, she goes, hey, did you guys like jump rope? And started to engage these kids, and now she's actually going to create a program for them because she had no idea it was needed. Because their families can't afford to belong to this other organization, right? But she saw a need. That's how you can get involved as a community. I promise you, if you open up your eyes, there's a need out there that only you can fulfill. Every single one of us has a call for something particular. There's something for you to do too. I don't know what that is, only you can discover that. But there's opportunity for everyone to go out and make a difference for these kids.
So the second question we have is pretty much redundant on the first one on available curriculums and trainings for teachers. Again, I will turn this over to Jan Edwards to answer that question, but I guess they're looking for more information on a public space.
Sure.
Of any type of curriculums.
There's actually a couple of, I know, Shared Hope. Yeah, Shared Hope has something you can download. Chosen, yeah. Well, it's teacher-led. You're not trained to do that. I also think that's the main one that I know. I also, the Blue Campaign from the government, they have stuff you can download.
146.
Yep, Love 146 has something you can download. So those are the three programs you can download and deliver yourself, and there's power in being trained in what to look for. So, you can always pick up the phone and call them and ask, how do I deliver this?
All right. And to any of the panelists, there are numerous training models available. Are there any recommendations as to which one is most effective that you could cite?
So I'm just going to ask, is there a particular group of people you were thinking whoever asked that question? Because we just went to a training program for healthcare professionals yesterday. Okay, so would you like to expand on that question?
Yes, for higher education and for healthcare professionals. Both.
Yeah. Oh, great. Okay, good. So again, we'll talk. But there's a couple of organizations, I know there's online training for medical professionals. As far as I know, I don't know of anything for higher ed teachers. I know almost all of us have done speaking engagements at colleges, and that's about as far as it's gone. I know UCF is doing some really cool stuff. Tomas, if you want to touch on that.
So UCF has a center of the study of trafficking and slavery now that just got launched. And so I would contact the Office of Global Perspectives at UCF, and they're launching this amazing, again, university level, grad school level. They're going to be working on curriculums and different programs in that institute. So,
Tina, do you have anything to say
Yeah. Hello, Tina.
about, higher education? Tina and Love Missions go out and they pack bags with the college students. And
Yes, so we do hygiene bags. I'm not good at promoting myself. We actually sew bags. They're beautiful bags that I designed, and we are going to have survivors making those bags. And then what we do is everything that they need if they're coming off the street is packed in there. So it's not small little bottles. We do big bottles, Bath and Body Works, things that you personally would like to make them feel valuable and of worth, because a lot of times, obviously they're not going to feel that way, but a lot of times they're not getting those things when they're coming off the street. So we do it as a packing party so groups can come and experience it. And now we've added a little part where Lindsay comes and she actually helps them to sew the bag, and then we pack it on premises. So we're working together to do that. So that is a fun project. It's a hands-on project, and every person who has done it had a really great time doing it.
And it teaches about human trafficking.
Yeah, and then we we're able to educate at the same time. So we do a little education program, and then they also do this. Yeah. Thank you, Lindsay.
You're welcome.
Now, this is a really good question. Since lost and missing children gets publicized, we get Amber Alerts, we have milk cartons and posters and all of that. How can it be prevented from having predators finding this lost or missing children before parents or law enforcement?
That's a great question. Lisa, Ross, any thoughts on that?
I think they already have them.
Yeah,
That's why they're missing.
yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know that there's a real practical way to do that, because, I mean, this information has to be public, so the public at large will know who to look for. And there's really, I don't know of any way that you can only keep good guys and good gals from seeing those pictures, right? So I'm not sure there's a good answer to that question.
Yeah, well, I think Savannah has a really great point, though. There was a little girl in Oviedo just recently, like last week. She was missing. She left her phone at home. So she was coached to leave her phone at home, right? Because they all have tracking devices, right?
Yep.
So I think the real answer, back to Lisa's point, is, when a child runs away, within 24 hours, they're at risk. And you can go to the missing child hotline, right, and say, you call 911, I think my child's missing, and you go through that whole thing. It takes them about 24 hours, right, to get all that completed by the time you've got the missing child poster up, and now they've been out for 24 to 48 hours, and if they're runaway, out they go. The other thing, too, to Savannah's point, I think, is, the grass looks greener for some people. And if you're engaging in a conversation with someone, in particular over social media, and you are lured in, recruited in, groomed in, loved in, connected in, and those children voluntarily leave, they generally leave in the night or they leave right after school. So a parent isn't really going to know they're gone until, anywhere from 3 to 6 to 12 to 24 hours, depending on what the parent does for work. So, that's really back to the parents having a conversation with their children about this. This is real. It happens. It's not an over there kind of thing. It's a right here, right now, and we can cite case after case after case of good children getting connected with not good people, and then off they go, and then they are missing, to Savannah's point.
And that is why we're so excited about the PSA competition that's going to be launched this fall in the Florida schools, because there's peer-on-peer, and it's not, somebody old like me telling them to not talk to that person on Instagram or Snapchat. So, they're going to listen to their peers, right? And so we want to really promote that and encourage that. If any of you are educators, principals, or those that are watching, please support each school district. It'll, are sovereign, and so they'll have to accept doing this or not. And I think it's just critical when it comes to educating our children.
And if I could address the question as well. So the question was about the posters for individuals that are missing and exploited, or missing, I'm sorry, but we're trying to prevent them from being exploited. And I would offer that the traffickers are going to take an opportunity to meet a vulnerable child, but I don't think they're going to look at a poster of a missing child. Now, if they encounter a child and they know they're missing, that's certainly one way to do it. And obviously, we all know somebody's missing because we see the poster, so we think that that's how you would become alerted to it. But traffickers are master manipulators. There's entire books you can buy on Amazon for how to manipulate a child into this lifestyle. If you go in on Amazon right now, you could find a book called Pimpology. You could find a book called The Psychology of a Pimp. And it would teach anybody that wants to know how to do that. It's a horrible thing. And I want to point out that because of that, and I'm putting that out there because to fight this, we have to understand it. To know how to attack this evil, we have to know what they know. And if it's only in their heads, we can't fight it. Every pimp out there knows about those books and that mentality. Now we can come at them too. So understanding that they have learned how to identify somebody as a runaway the minute they lay eyes on them. And they'll know exactly how to approach them and how to worm their way into their hearts and into their life immediately. So I would offer that the greater threat is to the runaway children and the vulnerable children in the immediate vicinity, physically or in the proximity to that trafficker, as opposed to maybe necessarily having a picture out there. I think the trafficker is going to know that person's a runaway and missing if they're targeting them long before that poster is generated. The other thing I'll tell you is we were talking about, it takes about 24 hours for that to get generated and put out there. But don't forget, law enforcement is working behind the scenes the entire time. The minute that call comes in, law enforcement is on it. They're searching the web looking for ads to make sure that person isn't being posted on Backpage or an equally horrible site. They're searching and interviewing those who recently saw that person. They're doing their entire investigation to find that child, hopefully before that poster ever gets created. Because the first 24 hours is the most critical time period to find the child. And our police officers don't rest the minute a missing child poster goes out, or excuse me, a missing child alert goes out, until that child is found. So I just want to put that out there as well, so that our law enforcement officers are working very, very hard in the background to make sure that every single thing is being done to find that child before the traffickers find them, and to hopefully save them.
And that's really why the parents knowing the social media passwords and all of that, because I can't tell you how many people have connected with me, and the first question I ask them is, what is your child's social media passwords? You got to get in and see who the last person was they talked to. Thankfully, law enforcement can do that, but I would much rather go, here's her last thread, here's his last conversation with who, ahead of time. And actually speeds up the process. And so the parents actually really having the conversation with your kids. You can't do this and not tell them what you're doing, because there's software out there you can put on your phones, you can put on their laptops that will track everything they're doing, because these kids are getting smarter and smarter, and they're hiding apps behind apps. So I've got two young people, they're going, yep. So, we've got to sit down and have that kind of conversation with your child, because if you do it and you don't tell them, you've broken a serious trust right there. And it's like I used to share with my daughter, drive safely, and, oh, Mom, I'm a safe driver. And I'm like, sweetheart, it's not about you. It's about them. Because you've got people driving and texting. You have to be eyes for you and them. It's the same thing with these kind of, the technology is, if you put that app on there to track them, that's why that little girl left her phone she left her phone at home. What teenager does that? Unless they're coached to do that, right? So that's why you have that. You have to have the difficult conversation, and that's why this town hall and this conversation is so important, is you share one fact with your child and see what they say. And then that actually can open up a dialogue. If they don't believe you, awesome. Let's go online and look it up together. Because now it's no longer you, it's information coming from a third party. Having the peer-to-peer, having those kind of dialogues, having, survivors share what they've experienced. It's like, no, it's not an over there thing, it's right down the street from here. That's really what will make the difference of that missing child poster not happen, is if we talk to our kids.
I just want to add one more thing in there. There is a lot of apps out there, like you mentioned, that can hide things. There's also apps that can hide conversations. And I'm going to put this out there for all the parents out there that want to protect their own children and the ones that they have control over the cell phone. Apps like Kik, the minute you log out, it deletes the entire conversation, and you can never recover it. Kik doesn't keep it. There's no master server that has it. The minute that child logs out of Kik and logs in again on the same username, that conversation is gone. It's a dangerous app to have. It's a chatting app. There are safer ones that keep logs of conversations. I would also offer that there's other apps out there like Snapchat. You take a quick image and it's gone. What happened to that? Well, there's a lot of apps out there, and I've just mentioned two, that are dangerous, and a child does not understand how dangerous and how it can be used to hurt them.